Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about lesson 3 from unit 3 of our book here. It's about plant reproduction and growth. And so in your books, I'm on page 157 right now. So we're going to start this lesson on page 157. And so it starts with the sacred lotus plant. This is kind of a unique plant. It actually can live for over 1,000 years. And the seeds of this plant can actually remain viable for over 1,300 years. So it's a very long lasting plant, that's for sure. But this plant, the sacred lotus plant, actually has the ability to regulate temperature a bit at night. So it actually can help regulate the temperature. And so this question, our kind of central theme here for this lesson, what function do you think a flower that stays warm at night might have for a plant? And what function do you think a sweet smelling flower might have for a plant? Well, a flower that stays warm at night can help attract other organisms, like an insect or small animals that climb in and spend the night. And a flower that smells sweet might attract insects or other animals. And the whole purpose of attracting those insects or other animals is to help pollinate that plant. It actually takes that pollen from the plant and helps fertilize that plant and actually creates new viable seeds that could then grow new plants. And so animals and insects actually play a very vital role for many plants in their reproduction. So if we turn the page here and we talk about exploration 1 here. So like all living organisms, plants use the processes of reproduction to produce offspring. And they have very unique structures that help in that reproduction of of the offspring for plants. Okay? And so some of those unique structures can be like the willow trees. They have flowers and clusters, and they kind of have this kind of cottony type uh, thread or kind of kind of like cottonwood trees that we have around here. Okay, and so what these do is they actually will then catch the wind and they can actually disperse their seeds. So each one of those little kind of cotton ball looking things is kind of attached to a seed and it'll catch that and it'll carry that seed along. Cherry trees have distinctive flowers that range in color from kind of a whitish to a pink, and the flowers contain sugary nectar and pollen and rich protein-rich pollen. And the purpose of that is to attract those animals. And those animals will come and they'll help pollinate those flowers right there. Pomegranate trees grow fruit, and so a lot of trees grow some sort of fruit on them. And those fruits they can attract animals. They help protect the seeds even, and then they can help in the dispersion of those seeds. And so sometimes maybe animals eat the fruit and then carry the fruit along to another spot where those plants can grow some more. Our final example here is of blue spruce trees. Okay, they actually have male and female cones, both of which are covered in these tough scales. And uh, the cones contain, some of the female cones contain these lightweight seeds. Okay, and so they can help, again, attract animals. These cones can, and they help in the dispersion of those seeds, and they can help protect those seeds as well. So plants can reproduce in kind of two ways. So one would be the sexual reproduction, and the other is asexual reproduction. Okay, so sexual reproduction, we've talked about that. That's combining of two different genetic traits from two different organisms. Okay, so plants kind of go through that too. And so you can have two different forms of sexual reproduction. You can have reproduction of seedless plants, and these are things like mosses. So mosses can do that, and they do that by the formation of spores and releasing spores. Okay, now many of these plants, like mosses, they kind of depend on more wet conditions, so very wet climates to make this work. And so how might dry conditions affect the reproductive success of a seedless plant? Well, the dry conditions might make it difficult for things like mosses to reproduce. They make it difficult for mosses to reproduce, which is why the mosses tend to grow in wetter climates. They don't tend to grow in dry climates. You don't see mosses in those situations. The other form of sexual reproduction is the reproduction using seeds. Okay, so what happens is the pollination happens, and it can form a seed. So the plant forms seeds, and then those seeds will grow and mature with those plants. And then when they're ready, they can actually be dispersed and actually then grow and form new plants. We know this. Okay, we've seen this many times. Okay, so pine trees do this. They have different types of cones, male and female cones, and actually they will form those seeds, and they are in those cones. And then those cones open up under certain conditions. And depending on which pine tree it is, those conditions can vary. Some pine trees, their cones open up every year. Other pine trees, they actually needs a forest fire for those to open up. So some pine trees actually, the heat from a fire the heat that's up above will actually then cause that cone to open up, and then the seeds will fall out of that cone. But they only open up after a fire, because that's the only way those new trees are going to have enough sunlight to grow. If the older trees have been burnt away, and then the new trees would be able to start growing. We can also look at a few other seed structures and maybe how they reproduce. All right, so if we look at the milkweed seedlings, see they kind of have this kind of cottony tail on them. Okay, it kind of catches the wind. So the dispersal method would be the wind. Okay, these small, lightweight seeds. And then they have the feather-like shape, helps the seeds glide on the wind, and they can actually drift and be carried very far distances at times. Another example of structures could be dry burdock, the plant structure here. These have these little hooks on the end. So each one of these little lines come out. There's a little hook right on the end there. And so these will stick to animals' fur, or maybe if some of you guys have been walking outside and you just kind of caught one of these type of plants, and they'll catch on your clothing and things too. But these seeds stick on animal fur, they'll actually stick on people as well, and then those are carried to other places, and as they're going, the seeds may fall out, or this whole structure may fall off the animal a distance away from where it was picked up, and that's how that plant spreads. And sometimes other plants have unique methods too, like the palm tree, so the palm seed. Okay, so these can actually float in the water, so they'll actually fall into the ocean, and they'll actually float, and they can float many, many miles over a period of days and weeks and even months. And so they'll float in the water until they get to a new area, and then they can sprout right there where they get to a new beach. Okay, and so if we look here at our evidence notebook question, the sacred lotus has a large seed pod that eventually dries out and causes the flower to bend over. How do you think the sacred lotus plants, how do you think the seeds of that plant are dispersed? Well, the seeds fall into the water and sink or are carried away. So these seeds fall into water, maybe there's a current there, it can actually carry those seeds to a new area where that sacred lotus plant can then start new. The other type of reproduction in plants is asexual reproduction. So some plants actually have the ability to reproduce asexually as well. So one we've all seen is potatoes. So you've probably seen, if you had some potatoes at your house, maybe you start to see these sprouts that come after the potatoes after a period of days or weeks that are sitting in your house. And these are actually just the start of new sprouts for those potatoes. So these potatoes can actually reproduce asexually. So these would actually, if you would actually have this potato outside in the ground, these sprouts would actually form and actually grow new potato plants right there. You can also see this, trees have this ability. Many trees have this ability to do that as well. Maybe you've seen a tree that has been cut down before. And as a tree gets cut down after maybe a year or so, you actually start to see new saplings coming up around the stump of that tree. And that actually has the ability to reproduce from the root system. Okay, so if we look at some different environmental conditions and look at what type of reproduction would be most beneficial here, if we have an environmental condition of sunlight and nutrient levels are stable, well, we could have some asexual reproduction that would happen. There's plenty of resources, and everything can colonize quickly. So asexual reproduction can actually happen faster. Okay, so that'd probably be a beneficial one there. But if water becomes scarce, sexual reproduction may be better because it may produce more drought-tolerant offspring. You're going to combine the genetic material. You're going to get new genetically unique plants, and they may be better able to survive in drought conditions. Or maybe if you have a pest species is introduced to an area. Now, again, that could be a type of reproduction that could be beneficial, be sexual reproduction, because you get new genes, new unique plants that might be resistant to those pests. And finally, if we have a new species or a new space for growth becomes available, well, that could be asexual again because it happens very quickly. So it's better able to colonize quickly. So those plants could actually take over that new area very quickly. Okay. So if we look at the majority of plants on Earth are seed plants. If we use evidence to construct an argument about why producing seeds might be advantageous to the reproductive success of a plant species, well, seeds have hard coverings that protect the plant embryos, and this can allow the embryo to survive harsh environmental conditions. And actually that's very beneficial, especially in an area like we live. If you have a seed that can survive those harsh environmental conditions, it's better chance for it to grow. For example, like seeds in our area have to survive the winter before they can germinate a lot of times. And so those hard outer coverings actually help that seed survive the winter, and then next spring when it starts to warm up again, those seeds will actually then be able to germinate and create new plants. All right, guys. So we have a couple more explorations here. So there's one more video after this one. It's about exploration 2 and 3. So as you get done with this one, please make sure and remember to watch the next video about exploration 2 and 3. Thanks for all your hard work, guys.